into what we're going to do today. So you guys are we're going to send you out a kit, and eventually you're going to create something that looks like this. I know it's a little tough to see in here, but this blue part is what we're going to make today, which is the car frame or the chassis. So I'm actually going to 3D print your design, and I'm going to send it to you with all these parts, the wheels, the electric motor, some of the gears, and we're going to send that out to you, and then you can actually hopefully get this solar car operating, and at the same time learning a little bit of some basic CAD design. So let me give you a little bit of an overview of how that's going to look. For the most part today, you guys are going to design a rectangle, okay? We're going to keep it fairly simple. So you're going to have a rectangle. It's going to look roughly like this. And that's going to be our car frame. Okay. Now we are going to have to put 2 holes in this for our axles for our wheels. But other than that, that is pretty much what we're working with. Now, at the same time, we do have some exact measurements that we're going to use. So let me switch colors here. And I'll be going over these later. But we have to use these for them to work with the parts that we have. All right, so this one, for example, we need to have this car chassis exactly, change that, 85 millimeters long, 45 millimeters wide, and then we're also going to have a height of only 8 millimeters. So again, it's going to be a little bit on the thin side. And then the other tricky part that we have is these axle holes. This is the trickiest part because these axles have to fit in there correctly. So these axle holes are going to be a certain size, and they're actually pretty small. We're going to make those 5 millimeters in diameter. Okay. So that's pretty much all we're going to, and hopefully you guys will be doing in designing in TinkerCAD today. We may add a little bit to it where you will personalize it by putting your name on the side. Possibly, ideally, the only spot where it really works is maybe in this area right here. We may have you guys try to go a little bit further, put your name on there. So when we 3D print these, your name will be sticking out just a little bit on the side. But it's kind of a nice little feature to add. Otherwise, once we print these and send them out to you, we're then going to add the following parts of this. So we're going to add your wheel here. We're going to have a wheel here, here. And then we're going to add a motor on there. There's some gears, a few other things, your solar panel, and some wiring on top. All right, any questions at this point? I'm going to unmute everybody just for a bit. Anybody have any questions on that so far?
Do you have any questions?
No, not that I know of.
All right, excellent. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to bring up the TinkerCAD software. You don't have to don't get into your TinkerCAD software yet. I just want you to watch how I'm going to quickly kind of go through this, but I just want you to get an idea of how you quickly can design this in TinkerCAD. Once I'm done with that, then we'll go back and I'll have you guys get into TinkerCAD and we'll slowly go through it step by step. Okay, so again, this first one, just watch as I kind of go through the software so you get a good overview of what we're going to do. Okay, here we go. It took me a little while. So once you get into TinkerCAD, we're going to go to create new design. And again, don't do this yourself. Just kind of watch for a little bit. And Nate, if you can't hear me, or I'm not sharing my screen, let me know as I move along. So as you open up TinkerCAD, here's your big work area. Okay, they call this area the work plane. And you really need a mouse to do this well, unless you're really savvy on like a laptop. But you can move this work plane by right-clicking and then moving your mouse around. And that's probably the best feature because it allows you to view things. Over here, we have a way to zoom in and zoom out, and also kind of reference back if we get a little confused. Over on this side, we have a variety of shapes that we can add, and a bunch of tools we can also use. But for this one, we're just going to use the box, and we're going to tweak this. So I'm going to bring the box over here. Sorry, I'm going to place that a little differently. I'm going to zoom in a little bit on this. I'm going to turn it just so you can kind of see what's going on. And this is going to be our base. All right. I'm going to click on the corner here. And the coolest thing about CAD software, instead of drawing this by hand, is you can click and just add in your measurements. So in our case, we want this 45 millimeters wide. Zoom out a little bit. And we wanted it 85 millimeters long. Okay. So already we've got a pretty basic rectangle, which I'll move back. Now we have to get the height fixed. So we click on this, and we can drop that down to 8 millimeters, because that's what we need. And right there, we have the basis of our car frame. Okay. And I do know the units, you can change them to inches, but we're using millimeters in this example, but that's where you would adjust that. Okay. Now you can also double click on this. That really makes it nothing. It's like a hole. It's not a solid structure. So in this case, we want it to be a solid structure so we can 3D print that item. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to add two holes in this. So you'll go over to the right, you'll grab this cylinder, and we'll drop it on our work plane. I'm just going to rotate this view so you can see this a little better. Now we need to get this cylinder, which is eventually going to be our long hole that goes through the box. We need to get this cylinder to rotate 90 degrees and lay down on our work plane. So if you hover over this near the top, you'll see this kind of compass setting show up, and you'll then just click and drag that. And sometimes what I do is I just forget trying to get to 90. I just put in 90, and then it drops it where I want it. So that's 90 degrees. So we've got to start, but now we need to make this thing smaller and narrower, and then we've got to stick it in our box. So it'll be our axle hole. Okay. So same thing like last time, we'll change the dimensions on this guy. And we want it to be the same width as our car frame. So we're going to do 45. Zoom out a little bit more. Over here, we're going to change the diameter of this. We want this hole to be 5 millimeters. So we're just going to put in 5, hit enter. And we also need to change the height of this so it's 5. That way all the diameters of the circle are 5. And that looks a lot better. So when we zoom into that, we're like, okay, well that would be good. We can stick a metal axle through there and work with that. Now the hard part is we actually need to get it into our car frame. So you can drag this and you can move it around, and it's not perfect. And as you can see right now, I can't really easily move it up. It's just moving back and forward with the mouse. So I'm going to drop it there and zoom in. And you can see this doesn't work because it's not sticking out the other side. It's not really centered at all. And we can use some other tools. Like we can click on that item, and we can use a few keyboard shortcuts where I can do the left arrow and move it over here, right arrow over here, or I can hit Control and I can move it up. But it's really hard for me to guess where the center is here. So I'm like, well, that's not really centered. I don't feel like that's centered. So it gets a little tricky. But luckily they created a tool in this software where we can align things. And to use the alignment tool, you have to click on the blue area, the work plane, click and hold, and then drag over the two things you want to align. Okay? Then they're all selected. We come up here, and it should pop up and say align, but that's our align tool. And then it gives us a bunch of options. Okay? So let's click on this first little black dot. Okay, and this first black dot, this is what happens, and that doesn't really help us either. This one is a little bit better. This one kind of makes it stick out a little bit further. But this middle one actually at least centers it in the middle. Okay, so it kind of automatically did that. Now we still have a problem with that this hole is sticking out and we don't have anything on the back, but at least we have it centered from the top to the bottom here. So we're going to right click in the blue, drag over the items we want to line up again, hit align, and now we really want to move this red box over. So you can see that we have these dots over here that represent the red box. If I click here, it only moves it over a little bit. Oh, actually, that one actually did work. If I move it back, oh, it already synced actually. So that automatically aligned this hole to the very end. Okay, and we can double check that. And the key is we want to see if it comes out the other side, because if we 3D print this and the hole stops like 4 millimeters from the end, you're not going to be able to push your axle through. Okay, so it looks like we've got a hole on both sides now, and that's good. We want that. All right. Now a little trick here is we need another one, but instead of going through all that work, what we can do is we can click on this hole that we already created. We can hit Control C for copy. So I hit Control C for copy, and nothing happened. Let me try that again. Control C. I don't think it copied. Well, I take that back. Usually it copies. I plugged in a separate keyboard, so I'm not sure if it's my keyboard or my laptop keyboard. Well, so we got to do a little bit the hard way, but if Control C works for you, which it should just create another duplicate, and then we can move that hole all the way back over on the other side. All right, so that way we have two of them. So in this case, I'd have to go through, drag out a cylinder, rotate that again, and go through the process we just did to create that other hole. But hopefully that Control C option works for you, where you can just quickly copy it, and then you can just slide it to the left using your left arrow keys, and it should already be centered because we aligned the first one. So that's kind of the basics of what we're doing. What I'm going to have you do now is I actually want you to get into TinkerCAD. We have directions off to the right. Hopefully you have your nickname, and I'm going to stop the share here. But if you look over at the chat, if you go to that web link, that'll take you to our TinkerCAD classroom. And what that does is it allows me to see each of your projects in there. And then I can actually 3D print your projects from there, and also tweak some things. So hopefully you've got that set up. But if you'll open up TinkerCAD, get into TinkerCAD. And once you put in your nickname, you should be able to click on Create New Design. Okay, and I'll give everybody a little bit of time to do that. Once you're in it, if you could just chat and say, hey, I'm good, I'm in, then we'll actually get started and we'll go through again step by step a little slower. And if you do feel comfortable, I mean, you can work ahead, no problem. But either way, we'll go through it one more time slowly, and then we'll probably add up to personalize the name as well. Good, looks like we got 2 people in. All right, quick check. I just logged into the TinkerCAD. It looks like I can see all 4 of you, or at least logged in. Is anybody not logged in? Just in case that's inaccurate. Nate, can you still hear me okay and see everything okay on your end?
Yeah, I can hear you and see you. Everything's good. And no one has responded
Okay.
about not seeing it or not being in it.
All right, good. Thanks, Nate.
No problem.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do that same thing. I'm going to go slower this time so you can kind of work with me. One piece of advice I'll give you is if you can try to get your 2 windows up where you have, me over on the right-hand side so you can see what I'm doing in my TinkerCAD, and then get your web browser on the other side where you're working in your TinkerCAD, and that may take a little while to orchestrate, but if you can try to get those 2 windows, then you can just kind of look over, even if mine's a little smaller, and still sort of see what I'm doing. After I go through this, we'll take a break. You guys can keep working, and then if you do have questions or need help, Nate and I will be available to kind of walk you through that, and then we'll have a few little bit closing directions as well. All right, so let's go back to TinkerCAD here. So again, we're just going to do the same thing that I just did. We're going to slow it down a little bit because this is what you're going to create your final copy. Now, I will say if for some reason, your final design, if I print it and we send it to you and it doesn't work, like the axle wheels, the axles don't fit through it, or the width is wrong or something like that, I will try to eyeball it, and maybe I can make corrections before I print it. But if it is wrong, it's okay. We will also send another car frame that will work, that's a little different material. So at least you'll still be able to use your car, even if you mess up this design a little bit. So don't worry about that part. Okay, so let's grab our box. We'll drag it over here. I like to put it kind of in this direction. And again, if you right click on this blue area, you right click and hold it and move your mouse, you can rotate this view. And I think that's probably the most difficult part in TinkerCAD is actually, as you're working on this thing, being able to manipulate the view in the object. If I click on the box, I can use my right arrow and I'll move it that way. Left arrow the other way. If I do up, it moves it along that axis or this axis. If I want to move it along a different axis, such as the Z-axis, then I have to hit Control up and down, and that moves it like into the air, okay? You can also move it below the plane. So one nice trick is like if you're way up here or something and it gets screwed up, all you have to do is hit the letter D, and it'll bring it right back down to the work plane, okay? So if you're struggling with a view or it gets too small, again, use your positive negatives. If you've got a roller wheel on your mouse, you can zoom in just by moving forward and that such. But I do think that's the hardest part in TinkerCAD is manipulating the view so you actually can see what you're doing. Okay. Hopefully, does everybody have a box on there? So we'll just start with that. Just chat with Nate. Chat with Nate that you got a box on there, and then he'll confirm with me. If you do have the box on there, you can click on the corner, and now we need to get our measurements in there. So hopefully you remember the width is going to be 45 millimeters. Okay. And then again, if we go over here, you might have to click on that corner and click on the number. And once it's highlighted, you can actually type in the new numbers. Hit 85. A lot of times you don't even have to enter and it'll all automatically update. Okay. So we've got our length times width. I'm going to zoom in, or you can use these positive negatives over here. It's pretty user friendly. And if you click on this, we're going to change the height. We need to make it thin. We need to make it 8 millimeters. There's a couple reasons for this. For the solar car, we don't want it really thick and heavy. We want it light. So when you get this into the sun, it'll take off in your driveway. Or with my kids, we were using it on a road where we have kind of a rough street, but it still worked pretty well. But we want a light, thin frame that'll still be strong, which it will be because of the 3D printing process. All right. So we'll just double check our numbers before we go any further. So we got 45, we've got 85, and then our height is 8. So all right, so we're good. Now I'm going to manipulate the view. I just want to be able to see it from this angle. I'm going to drag this cylinder. This cylinder is the solid one that actually would like 3D print an actual cylinder. This one just represents a hole. And that's what we want. We want to make our axle. So I'm going to bring this over here. We need to rotate this so it's flat lying longitudinally. Something along those lines. But we want to drop that so it's laying flat on that workplace. So if we hover over the top here a little bit, it should pop that compass up. As soon as it does, click on it and then rotate it in the direction you want to move. All right, I give up because I'm impatient, so I just click on it and just move it to 90. And there we go. And I can double check, is it lying on the plane? Yes, it's lying on the plane. If for some reason it got up in the air, we could just hit the letter D. That would bring it back down. All right, so now we need to get this hole to be 5 millimeters in diameter. So again, we'll click on these arrows here, and we're going to change this one to 5. Let's see what it does. Okay, that's good. This one we want to be longer, but let's go up to the top here. This needs to be 5 as well. So it's actually a circle, not an oval. All right, good. So we're getting there. We just need to make this as long as our frame. So if I click on this line again, we're going to make this 45. All right. And then we've got our hole there that we will eventually move into place. All right, Nate, any questions on your end?
I asked no questions, but 2 people said that they are good so far. So,
Okay, good.
yeah.
All right, again, if you have a question, just chat it to Nate, and then he'll stop me, and I can address some items. All right, so again, just like before, we now need to move this guy. Whoops. We want to move him into our car. Man, that's a pretty good close drop right there. Again, you may be able to manually get this thing centered and nice, but it's a little bit tricky. So again, it's not sticking out there, but at least we got it touching a red thing, and that's half of it. We do want our axles to be somewhere near the end here. So now we want to line these up. So we're going to click on the blue area. It doesn't work when you click it on the red because it just highlights the object. But we're going to click on this area right here. We're going to hit align. Okay, and we're going to try to bring this out to where we need it. And there's a couple ways we can do this. I could click on this or this. That would shift it up to the top. This looks like the middle, and this would be shifting it to the bottom. So let's get it in the middle there. And then we're going to rotate this because we also need to get the box more lined up. And we're still in the alignment tool. So you can see we can click on these guys. A lot of times if you just click on them, it'll line up automatically. But we'll click on that, and that should bring everything flush. We'll just double check on the other side. Sometimes what I've done with a different part, but it was like I had my measurements off, or it could have been the software, but I didn't see anything on this side. And when I zoomed in, you could see that it actually closed off. So we just want to make sure we have a hole on both sides. Okay. Now, hopefully our control copy feature works here. We're going to click off of that. I've made it a group already. All right, so we got the item selected. Still doesn't let me do my Control C. I'm used to the shortcut keys. So it looks like we're gonna have to manually do that. But again, hopefully try your Control C first. It should just copy it right next to this one, and then you can just move it down the rectangle to the other end. And if you are able to use that Control C, just chat that to Nate so I know, because that feature usually works. At least it worked yesterday when I was going through this again. So again, if you can get that Control copy to work, that's the easiest way to make two of these guys. Okay.
Hey, Lance.
Yep.
Yeah. Will said that it did work for him.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
It may be me. I plugged in this keyboard into my laptop, so I've got a little bit of a different setup. So anyway, I'm just going to quickly make another one and go from there.
Also, Vishnu has asked a question.
Yep.
He said, how do you know how far the cylinder has to be from the side?
Good question. Yeah, so in this case with our car, you could actually, there's a lot of wiggle room. The big thing is just making sure the diameter is right and it's centered. But it could be a little bit close to the edge. I mean, it could be 4 millimeters from the edge. It could be a little more to the left. As long as it's, let me see if I can annotate this. You know, as long as it's somewhere in this area and not too close to the edge, you're good. And then same thing back here. You at least want it in this area. So you have some wiggle room. We just don't want it in the middle because it just won't, things won't fit. And you don't want it on the very edge because that may become a weak point if you only have a little bit of plastic there holding that, you know, as you get tension and pressure on that. So yeah, there's some wiggle room. I mean, you can move that around a little more to the left or right. Good question. Good question. Okay, so this is gonna be a little more time consuming because my Control C feature isn't working, but it sounds like it's working for you guys. So I got to make another column. We'll rotate that down to 90. Go through, put our dimensions in again. All right, and that should be pretty good. So we'll drag this guy over here. And again, that's pretty good, not perfect, but hey, it'll work for what we're doing. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to group. I want to group. If you're doing it my way, which is the long way, we do want to group these two things just to make sure things don't move. And when I do that, so I just highlighted everything, I went up to this group tool. So then it makes this hole in this box all the same object. So if I move one, it doesn't move the other. And hopefully when you do that, if you look through it, you can actually see your hole now, okay? But you want to do that before you start putting in some other pieces, because then whenever you move something, it'll move the other item. All right, so again, we need to align this. So just click on the blue, highlight the items you want to align. You want it centered. We also want this box to come out to there. Okay, I'm going to double check everything. So we've got 2 holes there, 2 holes there, but we don't actually see the hole in the other one, and that's just because we need to group these guys. So we'll click on everything we want to group. We hit group. And now you should have your 2 holes and everything is one piece. So if we start moving things around, it's a little bit better. Okay. Now the last feature we're going to try to do, and then we'll give you a little time, is adding your name on this, where your name just sticks out a little bit. Okay, in other words, just like extend it out. Now the problem we have is the way we are 3D printing this. We're not going to be 3D printing them like this because of warpage issues. We're actually going to print them on end. Okay, which means that we can't really just put your name up here, and we don't really need it on the top because we're going to have stuff on there. We also, the bottom is kind of pointless because of the way we're 3D printing it, the quality probably won't come up well. So we actually want to put it on the end right here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on this object, and we're going to rotate it 90 degrees. So it's going to look like how it'll print on the 3D printer. So there's our compass. Rotate 90. I just type in the 90, and there we go. Now, we do have this guy sticking up like this, so you can just click on it, hit the letter D, and it'll automatically put it on the top of the work plane. So again, the letter D puts it on top of the work plane. So what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to personalize this, just like you're putting a brand name on a product, which engineers do all the time. Like, where's the best place to put the brand name on there without it screwing up some of the features or hitting, some of the parts. So in this case, we're going to put it right here on this ledge, okay? And I'm going to move this out a little bit. We're going to go over here to our tool, and if you scroll down, you should see this text tool. Well, let's drag this guy out here. And this is going to be your name. So again, you can kind of see the size and shape of that guy. So we're going to click on that. And here's the shape. We're going to click on the down button. And here it gives us options. So we want to change the name of it. Again, so if you go back to click on this shape, once you have it out there, click on this down button where it says text, and you can actually change the letters. So I'm just going to change mine to Lance. Okay. And while I'm at it, I'm also going to change the height. We only want it to stick up like maybe 2, we'll make it 3 millimeters. Okay, not much at all. Okay. So as you can see, we're still going to have a hard time getting this guy to fit on there. So we also need to change the length and the height. Zoom out a little bit. We know our total length of our frame is 85, so I'm just going to make this like maybe 40. That looks a little better. And then we know our total width up at the top is 8, so it's got to be less than that. So I'm just going to make it 5. I'm going to zoom in here. Now we need to get this guy up. We wanted to get it roughly in the area that we want it. So this is where we're going to move it up in the air. So you'll hit Control and then the arrow key up to bring this guy up. Okay. We're going to click on the work plane, and we're going to tilt this so we can kind of see what we're doing here. And we're then going to move, whoops, adjust a few things. See if we can move this guy over. Whoops, I'm actually changing the sizes on this. So just using the arrow key, in this case the down arrow key, to get it roughly lined up. We'll change the sizes here in a little bit. I'm going to zoom in a little more. And now we're going to bring it down. So again, bring it down to Control. It's going a little bit into our project, and that's okay. We just want this to stick out a little bit, okay? And we can see that there. So that's pretty decent, not perfect, that's okay. I'm going to change my height because that got affected. Change it to 5. And our length looks pretty good. Now let's just see, without playing around with it anymore, if we can actually align that up on our frame using our alignment tool. So we'll click on the blue, since we technically have 2 objects. Highlight everything we want to line up. We'll move to our align tool here, and let's see what we can do with this. Looks like this middle one again will be our center. That centers it pretty good. So if we look at that, we just want to check. You can zoom in a little bit. It's sticking up just enough, but not too much. We can totally see it, and that'll actually become part of our car frame that'll be 3D printed. Okay, and we're actually going to print it vertically like this as well, so it should be a decent quality print. Now we still have two objects here, so we want to group them all as one object, because if I touch one of them and change something, it's going to move. So click on your blue, left click, go up to our group. Should say group. You can also ungroup objects. Hit group, and there you go. You have your one object. You actually have your car frame that hopefully has the right specs. And sometimes the only way you know that is 3D printing it and then trying it out. All right. So we're going to we'll take a little bit of a break here. At least I will. You guys can keep playing in this TinkerCAD. I'm going to go into your individual TinkerCAD designs and just see how you're doing. If you do need help, just chat it to Nate or I, and we can also work with you in like a breakout room where you can share your screen, or I can go into your TinkerCAD and maybe try to assist you. As far as moving forward, I'll give you the weekend to play around with, this, and then Monday I'll probably go into your TinkerCAD classroom that I created, and then I'll start printing your cars. Now, if you want to get fancy and you're like, hey, this is pretty cool, you can also add some more things to this car frame. I mean, you could put a little bit of a thing in the back. We can't put too much in the middle, but you can put a little bit on the end. Like you could take some of these shapes and make like a little spoiler or something with a wedge. You can play around with that a little bit. Just keep in mind that you do have to put a bunch of stuff on top. So only do some things maybe at the end or whatever, or you could add a star that's on the bottom that just sticks out a little bit, and you can see that pattern as well. All right, so again, we'll take a little break. If you feel good and you want to sign off, that's great. Otherwise, Monday I will go into the TinkerCAD accounts, 3D print your car frame, and then we'll put that with all the other solar car parts and some directions and some extension activities, and we'll mail that out to you. So hopefully you can get everything next week and start playing in the sun. Okay. So again, if you have any questions, just again, chat with Nate or I, and we'll try to assist you.